Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to the penultimate day of our TruStack Technical Summit, Race to the Finish. The finish line is in sight. It's tomorrow afternoon at 3:30. So thanks for joining us this morning. Just a very brief recap for those of you who might not have been on every single session since Monday, but we commenced the race to the finish, if you like, on Monday, starting with a keynote from myself and Russell Henderson, who's our technical director, just really reflecting on the last 12 months, where we were now and what we were looking at in the future, some of the trends that we'd seen. We then had a session with Thales, a multi-factor authentication vendor, all around, making sure that the people who are accessing your systems are actually genuinely the people that you want accessing your systems, especially as the edge of your network is now sporadically spread all over wherever. You can't define it as just the office anymore. Then on Tuesday we had Trend Micro. Had a little bit of a disaster in that the person delivering the presentation from Trend Micro had a power cut. But we rescued that situation, and one of my pre-sales guys, Stephen Madison, very eloquently got across the Trend proposition, which kind of shows that we don't just rely upon the vendors. We do actually know what we're doing in-house as well. Yesterday we had Dell, so all around endpoints. So in order to be able to access all of this, clearly you need a device to do it on. And then kind of the pièce de résistance today, if you like, is 365. And I'm very pleased to be joined this morning by a partner of ours called West Coast, and in particular, the managing director of that particular business, Mark Davies. So without boring you with the exact sort of channel model, if you like, but in IT, you have the vendor, so Trend, Thales, Microsoft, etc. You then typically have a distributor, and there's not that many left in the UK. Actually, there's probably only maybe 10 or 15 that I could name. There's been a lot of consolidation over the years, but there's a distributor, and then we have a managed service provider or a reseller, if you like. That's TruStack, and then you have you as a customer. And I can't buy directly from Microsoft. I need to go through a distributor. And there's several to choose from, like I said, but we have chosen to work with West Coast, and there's a number of reasons why we've chosen to work with West Coast. It's predominantly a people-based thing, because clearly the actual product itself, 365, is ubiquitous. It doesn't matter who I buy from. What I like with West Coast is the value they provide around it. And that's really important for us because some of that value trickles down to you as a customer. And for any successful recipe that we have in bringing you, a customer, a product, a solution that we sell, there's a number of key elements that we need. My sales team need to understand the product so that they can get across to you what it is the solution does. Our technical team need to understand it so that we can implement it successfully and support it for you. We need to have a successful relationship with the vendor, in this case Microsoft, and also really importantly, we need to have a good relationship with the distributor as well. And if one of those things isn't present, the chances of it succeeding is limited, and also the experience that you might get as a customer is limited. But I'm pleased to say that all four elements are in place with everything we do, actually, otherwise we wouldn't be bringing them to market. So yeah, we've got a really good relationship with West Coast, and I wanted Mark to just join us this morning just to talk a little bit about 365, about the whole consumption model, and get across to you what we're wanting to talk about. So Mark, I'll shut up now. Can I pass it over to you, please?
Of course you can. Yeah, absolutely. Right, I'm just going to share my presentation. Good morning to everybody that's joined us this morning, and thank you for having me. There obviously doesn't feel any pressure when Phil says that this is the almost like the grandstand finish, but I will do my best. So let me tell you a little bit about West Coast Cloud. We are part of the West Coast Group, as Phil said, and basically here's a bit of a summary slide of who we are, what we do from a numbers perspective. So you can see there, I mean, we do work with 700 partners over the UK, but we don't work with all of those partners in the same way that we work with partners like TruStack. Some of those will just be transacting partners. It won't be a key part of their business. It will just be that they'll be doing bits and pieces around cloud rather than having a key focus on it. So 1.4 million seats is how much we manage with the through these partners with the team that we have, and as it says there, we've got around 50 people that work for us. So we're probably very similar to a lot of customers that are on this call. That we're not a huge business from a people perspective, but we've been affected in the same way that a lot of businesses have by I suppose the shift that had to happen last year. I mean, we had to close our offices last tail end of March last year. We had to close those as well. We had to have everybody working from home, and that's not to say that we didn't allow remote working before, but typically it wasn't for everybody. I think it's fair to say that as someone who's running a business or someone who's responsible for people, you typically wouldn't allow all of the people in your business to all work from home at the same time. And that's not a reflection across the people that are there. It's more that some people just need to be managed in a different way. They need to be around other people because they, whether it's from just their mindset perspective or whether it's their experience perspective, you need people to be doing the right thing as much as possible. And I think we all know that sometimes even in the office, people don't do the right thing. So when you put them at home the whole time, how can you really trust that the things are going to carry on as effectively as you need to? So we had to go through that shift as well. But 365 absolutely played its part in what we do, and Teams specifically. I'm going to talk a bit more about Teams and some of the differences between what Teams gives you over a Zoom or over a WebEx. And how it draws these things together and has allowed this shift from I suppose predominantly being in the office to at the moment from a lot of people predominantly being at home and home working. So which I'm a massive advocate of. I have been for a long time. I've been around cloud for it's been around longer than you think, sort of 15, 20 years now. So it's not new. So and as it says there, this isn't just about 365, but it's how that draws in from a Dynamics perspective or even Azure as well. And that's what Microsoft are doing a really, really good job of pulling together these services. They used to have different business units as part of their business that would say they're the office team, they're the what would have been office communication server back in the old days, and these teams would work individually, but now they've all been pulled together, and these tools and technologies are really starting to integrate in a much clearer way than they ever have done before. That's a little bit about us. So Teams, I mean, from a 365 perspective, the reason that I've picked on Teams more than the 365 SKUs, because I think that most people understand that from a 365 perspective, it fundamentally falls down into three different places. And that's you've got your email, you've got Office, and typically you've got Teams that's there, and potentially people use a bit of SharePoint as well. But the really great thing about Teams is what it's starting to enable from a remote working perspective. So these are some stats that we've been provided from a Microsoft perspective, and I think the interesting one there is 82% of workers will be working remotely this year. So when you think that 4/5 of your workforce is going to be at home at some way, shape or form, not necessarily in all industries, but in quite a few industries, then it's how do you enable your teams to be working as effectively as possible? How can you make sure that they collaborate and really drive the business in the direction it needs to be going, or even to be delivering the same level of service or better than they were delivering before? And that's one of the things that we've seen as a business as well, is the people that we have working from home, because we did actually reopen our office tail end of last year, and predominantly because we would be classed as key workers for providing technology into healthcare. We did some huge amounts of business for the Department of Education last year as well, so making sure that people can enable their children to work from home when they can't get to school as well. So we actually have been back to the office for quite a while now. I've been in 3 days this week. It's one of those sorts of things that this is hopefully a new normal of not having to go to the office as much as we did before. I mean, just in my own personal circumstance, I live about an hour and a half away from the office. So that's an hour and a half each day, each way that I would have to travel to get there. So actually, for the days that I'm working from home, I'm saving 3 hours of travel for me, which makes me more productive in that time. It means that there's one less car on the road. There's less pollution, and you multiply that across all of the things. It feels like it should be a great thing if you can get that. If you can get that capability to allow people to work from home in as effective way or a better way than they're working in the office, then it feels like there's multiple different places that it adds value. I mean, there's definitely downsides to these things. I don't want to sit here and say it's all great, it's all great, it's all great. When you're on a Teams call or a Zoom call, and you've got 8 or 10 people on there, it's not the same as being in the same room as people. It definitely doesn't. You don't have that same sort of interaction. We as human beings are very social creatures. So it's those little nuances of, a look, a move, a conversation that happens, when we're there. So I'm absolutely not here saying, we should all sit at home and work from home and talk over screens for the rest of our lives, because I don't believe that either. I think there's definitely a balance to be reached, but there's definitely an opportunity to shift the balance away from the office a little bit and allow the remote working. As Phil was saying earlier, some of the other vendors will they will what's the word I'm looking for? Not accelerate. They will complement some of what Microsoft have from a security perspective. So as Phil said, tell us with their multi-factor authentication. Microsoft allows some of that from a perspective inside their tools, but having something that gives you that extra level of security for certain demographics of business that may be more heavily regulated is a great thing. And that's what some of the other vendors out there can look to do, is to provide services that sit around things like Modern Workplace, because the majority of people are using Office in their workplace. I mean, I got some stats. There's over 50 there's over 50 billion in cloud revenue that Microsoft make from a commercial perspective, predominantly around Azure and Modern Workplace, so including Teams. So it's a huge amount of revenue that is being created by people that are using these tools today. You may have seen some of the stats last year where they were talking about Microsoft went from something like 20 million users of Teams up to 70 million users. Zoom saw a similar sort of amount of growth from their platform last year as well. So the numbers speak for themselves. If you're not using this yourself, then there'll be competitors potentially of yours or other businesses that will be using them and using them effectively. And that's what a partner like TruStack can really help drive what this is and what it's capable of doing. Because if you look at Teams, holistically, most people will think I can do chat, I can do video, and I can do peer-to-peer calling. And then that's predominantly how they look at it. It's those three things. And of course, Zoom does the same thing as well, typically. So what I was wanting to look to do is go through a few different things that Teams does that maybe you don't know that it does. So some of these slides will build quite quickly. So I'm just going to talk you through them as we go. So as I was talking about the chat, the meetings, the calls, that communicating piece, that's obviously what most people know that Teams does. So then from a collaboration perspective, how do I share, whether it's an Excel document or a Word document or a PowerPoint inside Teams to other people for them to use whenever they want, and we can all work on that together in a similar sort of way. If you've used SharePoint before, you can put files in here that are locked and protected, so people can either just read it, or one person can work on it, somebody else can see that person's working on it, so they can't change anything while that particular document's locked. So the customization and extension, there's lots of apps that are part of Teams that can be added on, third-party vendors, in the same way that you would use your phone and add on apps to give you some different, I suppose, functionality. If you look there, SurveyMonkey, quite a few people will use that. You can use that from an internal perspective for your team for surveying, and also you can release them externally to people that are on a network that is basically it's trusted. So if you have a trusted domain inside Teams, then you're allowed to share content across those trusted domains. And as you'd imagine from a Microsoft perspective, it's the enterprise level security. So, but it's also, if you see there on the dashboard, it's what it can show to you as either a manager or an owner of a business, some of the high level analytics of what's actually happening inside Teams, both from an individual perspective or even across a team's perspective, a team perspective. And to give a bit of scope around this, Microsoft have got 2 data centers built in Dublin, and they are billion-dollar data centers, both of them side by side. So I've been to one of them, and as you imagine, they are vast, and they have a level of security. Nothing's ever going to be in a place where it's you're completely safe. And there's that old adage of, if you want a safe server, just put it in the middle of a room, don't plug it in, do anything. Then it is safe. But these are as safe as you are going to get from a hyperscale perspective for cloud. So again, coming back to the dashboard aspect of things, that gives you this visibility of what's happening inside your business for everybody that's using Teams as a tool. So here's Megan. She's a typical user of Teams. She can log in, either type her password, look at the camera, and then that gives her access to Teams. So I'm going to go through it as in you've used Teams, so you've got a level of understanding of what it does, but you can build out some Teams channels, which is on the left-hand side. So I'm under general at the moment. Top left-hand corner, there's the activity that's happening for me at any one time. And then I've got my chat window, which shows me the multiple chat windows that could be open and the messages of where they've come from. So Megan, status becomes available up here. I can set myself to be, in her case, she set herself to be available. And then from there, I can create inside the Teams channels over here the ability to add people to that team, remove them, leave it myself. I can hide that Teams channel so other people can't see it, or I can send the link to the team to go somewhere else. So here's some hidden Teams things here. So this could be something like a management group, or a particular, you could even share a Teams group here again with a trusted domain that's somewhere else. So once I'm inside here, it's very customizable. It's easy to use. And again, to get something like this set up, the guys from TruStack can help you with, the understanding of, the depth of what this does. Is it goes down. It's very customizable, and just to be made to work for your business, really. So here's something that's been added inside the main window here. I can go into any one of these channels. And then I can set something inside there that basically gives me the ability to index anything inside any of the channels. So in this case, it's the word launch has been searched for. So what that will do is it will pick up who's used that word launch across multiple different places inside Teams. And then once that has been flagged, I can see who may be talking about launch, because I've just launched a new project. So I want to see who's talking about it from a people perspective or message perspective across the Teams channels. So once I've done that, I've got the ability to have a look at the individual places where it's been talked about, so I can see what sort of things are being said about the launch. I can also go on from there to, as it says here, I can change any of these customizable things inside the toolbar at the top. So now I've gone to the Teams channel, which is design at the top, and now I can go through the individual chat window, which is all around Teams. Sorry, all around the design. if you look at the bottom here, so you've got Ligu who's typed in Chinese. So keep an eye on that in a second, because when we come down to that, it gives you the ability for multi-language people to type in their own language from their own country, if it's cross country, and then Teams will also give you the ability to translate directly inside here as well. So these are just again managing the team itself inside the project. So Megan's obviously got access. She wants to give someone else access. So then all she does is looks inside the address book, says, right, okay, actually I want to add Bob. So I put Bob in as a guest. I can also add him as an admin, and I can give bespoke permissions on each one of these individual areas. So now Bob's got access to design. So now as we go through, you can see that she's now looking to add some additional text that's inside here. I mean, obviously, it depends on your own preference, I suppose. For this, I'm to some degree, I'm a little bit of a fan of emojis, but sometimes they can go a bit too far. I mean, when we first launched Teams inside our business, I suppose it was about 2.5, 3 years ago now. Some of the people went a bit emoji mad. So it's sort of like it's one of those sorts of things. Again, you can turn these off, so people can't access them. They're a little bit of fun, I suppose. It's just about keeping them under control, because sometimes people can go a bit too far, well, for my liking anyway. So I come down to the message that Megan's typed here. You can see that there's a little toolbar that's just appeared that's got the thumbs up, the heart, similar sort of thing to what you'd get inside Facebook. So what I can do inside there is just say, okay, actually, I like that message. So if I just go back a second, oh, he says, there we go. So this is Lee's message. I can click on it, and then you can see that there's a tool there that says translate. So you can see that the Chinese then becomes the default language that's set inside Teams here. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in English. It could be in whatever language that has been set up in the first place. So, some really clever functionality that's inside this. And again, what I'm trying to show here is that there's so much more to this than it's video, it's peer-to-peer calling, and it's a chat message. There's so much more that you can get out of this as a tool when you really dig deep down into the configuration, what it is, how it works, and what you could potentially use it for. So this is again just creating a new subject that's been created. Again, you give it a level of importance, add the users to it. Once I've got the users inside there, here's the infamous emojis. So you can search obviously by category. And there we go. It's created as something. I mean, again, it doesn't look like it's that important, but it's sort of like it's the difference between being in the office and saying well done to someone when you can't be in the office to say well done. So it could be that little bit of camaraderie that is coming out in Teams that typically people don't have the opportunity to share. I mean, it's sort of I mean, we use Teams quite a lot internally for when it's somebody's birthday, and then everybody can then send a nice message, or we use it for when people pass their exams internally as well. So just those sorts of things that people can, I suppose, collaborate on. That's not necessarily business related, but it is about that camaraderie that people may be missing at the moment. So this is an email address that's specifically for this particular project. Then what I can do is I can go into I mean, this deck builds out a lot. I did say to the guys at TruStack, there's about 200 slides altogether in this, and this is about a third of it. So I mean, I'd be happy to share it with anyone that did want to. It's quite big, I'm not going to lie. It's about 256 meg. But if I can find a way to put it up for you to go through in your own time with the guys at TruStack to see some more of that functionality that potentially could be available in there, then I'd be happy to share it. So I didn't want this to be all about teams. So what I thought I would talk a little bit about is some of the verticals that you may be in yourselves, or people that you're potentially selling into as businesses yourselves. So we put together some research that we shared with our partners last year around these 8 key verticals. I'm not going to talk about all 8 of them. I'm just going to highlight some of the verticals that are there and some of the changes that we've seen. So from our perspective as an all-up business, we definitely saw a massive shift last year, both from a healthcare and an education perspective. So I think that from either local healthcare or from the NHS perspective, there was suddenly funds that were available to them that they probably didn't think they were ever going to get access to, but because of the situation, of course, they needed the tools, the technology. They weren't using Windows 95 anymore, or they couldn't use Windows 95 anymore, so or 98, whichever ones they were using. So suddenly there was a lot more hardware that was available, and there's obviously the latest tools and technology to make them as effective as possible, because quite a few of those were working from home as well. So they were 2 that we saw a massive shift in from our perspective. So from an education perspective, this is just to give some numbers of the amount of teachers that there are across the UK, and the amount of students that are out there in higher education. So there's a massive amount of opportunity to, this isn't being cynical, this is more along the lines of there's a massive opportunity to help enable these people to work more effectively in a completely different environment. And there's a massive opportunity there to give them tools and technology that potentially they didn't have access to before, because I suppose it could be a budgetary perspective. People didn't feel that they needed the latest and greatest, or didn't feel that they could integrate in this sort of way, or they didn't feel that people were going to be working as much remotely as they could be. So from an education perspective, we've definitely seen there's been a massive shift. So from a vertical perspective, there's a great opportunity to see that shift inside. For more and more remote working for both teachers, students, and anyone that's related to that education market, which, as you can see, is massive. Another one that's been affected massively has been automotive. Again, this is an old industry. Typically you would have to go in. There's car showrooms. You want to see, feel, touch the car, maybe take it for a test drive. But that's not been possible in a lot of places. So if you see some of the people out there like the kazoos that are more online, well, they're definitely more online, and the process, that's not a plug for kazoo, by the way, but they are much more online from a how you can purchase your vehicle, and the way that they've had to have all of their teams working from home, and how they've had to digitally transform themselves to make the car easily accessible and easily available for you to see as much of it as possible and to buy online. I don't know if people are like me, but whenever I had to go and get a new car, I used to dread it, because it's sort of like, as much as I wanted the new car, I didn't want to be pestered to death by the salesperson who was trying to close me on the day when I was going to have a look at it. I didn't want to listen to the videos that they made you listen to. I didn't want to fill in the reams of paperwork that I had to fill in before. And I think, again, with this transformation that's happened, it very much has made them need to slicken up the process to for people to buy remotely and make it easier. So again, this paradigm shift away from that traditional model of get people into their big swanky showrooms and the nice glistening cars there that we all get tempted by, to be more of a choice base. I can now go online, I can now do it this way. And then how something like a Teams tool, or just the way that they can manage the customer experience from a digital perspective. Oh, Kevin's already got a kazoo car. So I hope you're happy with the experience, Kevin. So I think that there's very much a case of the tools that these are enabling with the with the employees that they've got, and I suppose with the management. If I go back to that team's overview that they've got, I mean, it very much makes those people work differently. And I think that I've got a Kazoo car which I bought recently, which is why it's sort of front of mind. Very happy with it too, Kevin. And the thing about it for me is that experience of going through and I definitely know from the people that I've spoken to, either calling the call center or the call center's calling me, how because it's multiple calls that you get from multiple people across multiple teams, and having the right tools in place to enable that customer experience and make it more effective, I think that is what we're seeing this massive shift towards. So here's a sort of statement from Satya Nadella here. Regardless of what you think of Microsoft, it's this huge second wave of digital transformation that's happening here. And Microsoft to a large degree is driving this. There's other huge players out there, whether it's the Googles and the AWSs that are playing their part in this as well. This isn't all about one organization is changing the whole industry, because everyone plays their part. But what you do see from a Microsoft perspective is that they are, I suppose they've got this, people with Windows and people with Office are a huge demographic of what is being used out in the market today, and what people know and understand. Where Microsoft are quite clever is that they give away their software to a lot of schools and colleges for free. And there's a reason for that, is so then the schools and colleges will use their software, the staff and the students all become, I suppose, proficient at using these tools and technologies. So when they go out into their workplace, they already know those tools and technologies to say, well, I know how to use a bit of Word, I know how to use a bit of Excel, or I know how to use a bit of PowerPoint, because they have been using it throughout their working lives. Sorry, their school lives, not their working lives. Microsoft are hoping they are going to use it through their working lives. So again, it's this drawing together of all these other tools that they've got and building on them. Obviously, the fact that Microsoft bought LinkedIn as well. If you see some of the AI services that they've got inside Azure and what that can do. I mean, I was reading a story this morning, and this is AI can be used for any level of things really, but there's things like I saw something last year where AI was being used in one particular building to monitor the lifts. This building was huge, and it had 26 lifts inside it. And what the AI was able to do is look at patterns across the day of when the lifts were being used at their most in whichever floor that they were there. So then what it would do is it would automatically move the lifts, if they were empty, to that floor, so it was ready for people to come down. So people weren't standing on floors waiting for lifts, and it was supposed to be more time effective. So there's a good use of time, especially if you've worked in a big building and you've had to stand around for a long time waiting for a lift to turn up for you. It's sometimes it becomes a bit frustrating. Definitely, if you've ever been to IKEA, they need to get more lifts. So I think it's very much a case of AI can be used for really clever and innovative things like that, which is all about time saving. I read a story this morning of somebody that was using AI to map out on fantasy football when somebody potentially was going to be injured, well in advance of them being announced on the team sheets on a Saturday morning. So then this AI bot was looking at the teams of, in this case it was Aston Villa, looking at who inside the Aston Villa team were choosing their own teams and inside the management. And then last weekend it was Jack Grealish was taken out of a lot of these people teams because internally they knew he was injured, but externally nobody did. So if you're an external fantasy football manager, then you're at a disadvantage to the people in the know. So this bot was then looking at every team and then making decisions off of what was happening around those around those things happening, and then predicting going forward, this is what you could potentially do. So, I mean, this might seem like, you could say, what's the point in this story? What's the point in, where this is going? It's when you start using things either from a very useful perspective, like the lifts, or an innocuous perspective, like, looking at people's fantasy football teams, is people will become, more capable of looking at AI and what it can do to help, I suppose, shape the business and shape some of the processes they have, to take away some of that mundane thinking, because a lot of it is mundane, and make people more effective. So that is, all I was wanting to talk about today. It's around half an hour. There's some fantastic things that are out there. Some of the things around 365, you could talk for days on. The three key things for us, that we see from the seats that we sell. Typically Office plus email. That's typical, a business premium that's there. Or you've got the E3s, E5s, and I didn't want to go through all the different license types, because there's a huge amount. There was one particular slide that I was thinking maybe I could share this to show you how complex 365 is when you talk about it, and it is immense, and it's that level of capability and understanding that partners like TruStack and partners like ourselves have to have. It feels like it should be easy. It feels like you should just be able to say to somebody, there you go, there's your Office and there's your email. But it's not that. There's so much more to it that you can use to enable your businesses, when you really start digging down into it. So I just want to, obviously, while I've got the opportunity, say thank you very much to TruStack for giving me the opportunity to talk, and for being such a great partner. They really are invested in their business to drive change in themselves as much as in their customers. So I think that's really refreshing. You don't see that across, I said about 700 partners. You don't see that across the majority of them. You see that across a few special ones.
Very kind word, Mark, and thank you very much for giving that overview there. Yeah, I mean, if I look back to the last 2 years, our 365 business has gone from nothing really to quite a major part of what we do. And I guess that's the adaptation that, and it doesn't matter if you're a law firm, a housing association, or a manufacturer of shoes, which we're going to hear from in a second, incidentally, by way of a testimonial. Everyone needs to adapt. We've adapted our business. We've changed. We started life out as a virtualization consultancy practice, and now I would describe us as a managed services partner. And there's lots of things that we do now, not just virtualization. There was just a few things I was going to just pick up on there, actually. So Mark mentioned that it's a big product. Now, because it's such a big product, we openly admit we don't do absolutely everything in-house. We can't. And a good example of that might be SharePoint. So you may or may not know, but we actually have a business partner called Montpellier. Montpellier are actually a very small shareholder in TruStack too. So they came from the merging of PCI, SITS Group, and Pivotal, and they actually had some shares in PCI. So Montpellier aren't just your average kind of subcontractor, if you like. They're actually part of the fabric of TruStack, and their expertise is around SharePoint, amongst other things. So we can help there. We also have a very good relationship with an ex-customer of ours, actually, called John Salmons. Now, John was the head of IT for a very large housing association up here in the Northeast. He's a real technologist. And about this time last year, he retired, and now he started up his own business called the 365 Key. So John can provide some additional kind of value, if you like, around what you can get out of your 365 investment. So there are two things that we don't do in-house. One of the other things that we do in-house is we are in the throes of launching our new TruStack Voice and TruStack Unified Communications package, which is a cloud-based telephony solution, and it integrates with Teams. So to an end user, to a customer, to you, your staff, it just looks like they're using Teams, but this is actually both your internal peer-to-peer system, as Mark called it before, but also your external dialing as well. So we really see Teams as the kind of the center of how people are going to operate in the future. We've seen a big adoption of 365, Mark, over the last 2 years. Do you have any sort of anecdotal or actual real statistics on where you think the market is at the moment? Because I think I know where it is, but how much percentage of people have joined 365 and how many are left to join? Where would you say the barometer is at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, people always feel that this is a saturated market and it's all done and dusted and it's there or thereabouts. But from this, and these are Microsoft stats, not necessarily ones that I'm making up. So Microsoft estimate in the UK on the cloud service provider model, there's roughly 55 to 57% of businesses that are going through CSP. So there's other licensing models out there like perpetual, which is where I just buy a license, and that perpetual license is, in the old days, it would be there's an Office 2010 or 2013, and I use it ad infinitum until I'm ready to update, which is why you get so many people on old software still. So, or you'd get a traditional, for a larger business, you'd get an enterprise agreement that will be out there. So again, Microsoft are trying to consolidate some of these things. So they're calling it modern licensing, and there'll be typically two business models of either cloud service provision or an enterprise agreement. So in answer to the question, roughly 57% of UK businesses now are on Office 365. So this is the automatically renewing one, or the evergreen version of it, rather than being on 43%, which would be on a perpetual license, either through EA or through Open. So again, there's still a lot to play for here for for both partners and for end customers to move themselves across.
Well, that ties up with my thinking. I still think that we've got a large amount of our customers who aren't on 365 yet. I think we've maybe got to about 50% of organizations might have applications which require if you're a lawyer, case management systems, etc., proof of concepts to be done of how it's going to work with 365. So it's not a case of just whacking it in. As we all know, there is a lot of consideration, proof of concepts that happen, but I still think there's a lot of people who haven't. And further to what I was saying on some of the calls earlier this week, that's where we win out with our pre-sales, where we'll work with you to find the right licensing model. So, do you need an E5? Do you need Office 365, or do you need Microsoft 365? Will Business Premium be the right product for you? How am I going to back it up? How am I going to access it? How am I going to protect it? And it's that full sort of solution. But I'm conscious of time, so Zoe, if you'd be so kind as to run the video. Like I said earlier this week, it's nice if we can get a client testimonial to kind of back up what we're doing. So we've pre-recorded one for your viewing pleasure today. So Zoe, if you can run that, please, thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Mark. I'm joined here by Graham from the ClinkCard Group. Graham, could you just do a little introduction to yourself and just tell everybody who you are, who you work for, a little bit about the business?
Yeah, so my name's Graham Bolton. I work for a company called the ClinkCard Group, which is an independent footwear retailer based in Middlesbrough. Sort of most commonly known for our retail stores are Charles Clinkard, and between sort of retail outlets and concessions, we've got about 40 destinations through the UK.
Brilliant stuff, good stuff. So yeah, thank you for agreeing to do.
Okay, so thank you very much to Graham at Clinkcard for providing that testimonial, and obviously he also mentioned Montpellier as well, which was quite good. I haven't really got anything else more to say other than thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, big thanks to Mark Davies from West Coast for sharing his thoughts, not just as a technologist but also as a business leader, I guess, if you like. So that was quite interesting, not just a technical pitch, so to speak, because we're all reasonably technical, and sometimes thinking a bit more laterally is actually quite beneficial. So thank you very much for joining us. We will see you for the final keynote tomorrow at 3:30. It'll be myself and Joe Ollerboard. So Joe's our services director. So part of being a managed service provider is that once we've talked you through whatever solution you want to buy, and we've installed it for you and you've bought it from us, it's that ongoing feeding and watering of it, and that's what Joe does. That's what his department is responsible for, the ongoing managed service. And then the moment you've all been waiting for, hopefully, the racing at 4 o'clock, where if you did ask for a hospitality box, and I know we've got some public sector clients, and unfortunately you couldn't accept it, so we've got more for ourselves. Just joking, but at 4 o'clock we've got the virtual racing. So I hope I acknowledged at the start of the week we're all working from home. It's good to feed the soul a little bit and do something different. So I really do hope you can join us at 4 o'clock for the virtual racing. So thank you once again. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Cheers now. Bye bye.